So today I'm really excited to have Thomas Knapp, who is now the principal consultant at a company called Digital Farming. Just recently was CIO and Chief Administrative Officer at Waterstone Mortgage Corporation. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to be here, and I've kind of the next step in our relationship. We've known each other for quite some time.
We have. Go ahead and tell us a little more about digital farming. What is that? That's new, right?
Well, it is new. So, as I started my journey into retirement, which has been planned for the last year or so,
Uh-huh.
I still had a lot of energy. I thought I had, if you will, one of the guys that worked for me said, "Hey, you still have your fastball." So it seemed like I could. There were still opportunities where I could retire, enjoy some of the benefits of retirement, but also
Yeah.
stay active and provide something. So digital farming to me is two things. First of all, it probably reflects a little bit of my upbringing. I grew up in Iowa, so I
Mm.
kind of didn't grow up on a farm, but grew up, kind of in an ag environment. And when
Yeah.
I thought about digital farming, based on the work that I've done in financial services, so much of digital transformation is looking to gather data
Oh.
and to kind of farm data from digital sources. So when I thought about, how do whether this sticks or not, I didn't pay anybody to develop my brand, but I thought it reflected what
Smart.
I'm interested in, and that is,
Yeah.
how do you, in this new digital age, how do you make sure that you're providing efficiencies by gathering data, if you will, farming data from various digital sources, bringing that into your processes and getting the efficiencies as well as kind of the data analytics and data decisioning that you can get
Wow.
out of farming data, collecting data from various digital sources. So that was kind of my mindset when I said, what do I want to do,
Hmm.
in this role, is to help organizations in their digital journey for sure. And part of that is just, how do you make sure you stitch together all the sources of data that contribute to your process. And certainly in mortgage lending, when you think about all the data that we need to get, either whether it's credit or
Hmm.
verification of assets or various things that we get on employment and income,
Hmm.
we can get that data digitally. But part of the process is making that transition and then getting adoption, both from borrowers as from our internal teams, that that's a path that we want to take, and that there's efficiencies that we can gain in that. So probably a little bit of a long-winded way as to how I got to digital farming, but I think it speaks to what I'm looking to. I think the services and expertise I think I can provide in this role.
That's really cool. For those of you who don't know, Tom was CIO and Chief Administrative Officer over at Waterstone Mortgage, gosh, from 2012 to 2022. And prior to that, you were Senior VP over at Fiserv, and you were in charge of product management, product development there. And then was ProVantage, was that a mortgage
You know,
company too?
when I left public accounting, my
Yeah.
consulting work there, one of my clients was Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wisconsin, and they had a
Mhm.
publicly traded arm called United Wisconsin Services that had a number of other companies, HMOs, PPOs, other healthcare services. And we spun off our pharmacy benefit management and vision
Mhm.
benefit management into a company called ProVantage.
Oh,
Ultimately, ProVantage was acquired by Medco Health, but I was CIO and had similar responsibilities, but kind of went from that healthcare environment to once we sold the company, made the transition over to Pfizer based on a long-term relationship I had with one of their
yeah.
executives.
What's interesting about your journey, you said you were PwC for a
Yes.
while when we were just talking, you know, MBA, that kind of thing, PwC. So you have a really solid foundation. You worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wisconsin. You're actually the CIO of Blue Cross Blue Shield. For a lot of people, that's it. That's like the highest level. But what's really interesting to me is you moved to first Fiserv, and then you kind of move more into product management, product development. I find that really interesting because then at Waterston, you were CIO, Chief Administrative Officer, but if you look at what they actually do, it's a product company. So you were creating products. So you
Yeah.
were going to Agile. You probably want, my guess is you were one of the first adopters of Agile and the whole product mentality. Am I right?
Well, I don't know if I was
design?
that leading edge, but
Yeah,
certainly we did have an agile methodology, and it was what's kind of interesting. And I not to get into a whole lot of, but
yeah,
we were a retail mortgage lender.
yeah,
We had brick and mortar branch offices, gosh, throughout the country. I think we had presence in 30 states. We were licensed to do business in 48 states. Big presence in Florida,
yeah.
Arizona, New Mexico, as well in the Midwest. And but we were owned by a community bank, a very successful community bank in the Southeast Wisconsin market called Waterstone Bank,
Yeah,
and we were Waterstone Mortgage. So, but we really acted as an independent mortgage banker.
got it.
And so we were very independent, great support from the bank, and certainly they were our warehouse lender, and we had access not only to that capital, but also to some of the other advantages that you had from being a federally regulated financial institution.
So again, is that with that you created that software and the services, because it really was those services. I get what you're saying to these other banks, but the software came with it. So you've really done it all, but now you're really in that role, you really delved into data. If you think about your lessons learned, you fell really into, and I think you were an early adopter in data for sure because of what you were doing.
One of the challenges that the entire industry has is how do we reduce the cost of originating a mortgage? And
Mhm.
frankly, one of the ways we have to do it is better use of technology. And I have one of the primary software tools that we use is our loan origination solution from a company called ICE Mortgage Technology. And the president of that company used to use a term, and he and I talked about it. He said the problem with the mortgage industry is when there's a challenge, we meet the challenge with what he called human spackle. And I don't know how attractive that term is, but I think what it said is you can't keep throwing bodies at challenges. That just, I think, from a cost structure
Yeah.
and from and again, we're all taking a humanistic approach to business. We know we're in business, but we're also we're all humans, and we want to make sure we're treating people humanistically.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, our challenge as leaders and as executives is to find ways to be as efficient as possible, as cost effective as possible, and having worked for public companies is to drive shareholder value and drive profits to the bottom line. So part of that, and this what I really enjoy doing is I'm a technologist, but I think I'm primarily someone that's able to look at opportunities and needs in the market and provide change. And that change is typically driven by implementation of technology and effective deployment of technology and adoption. So in the mortgage industry, as well as financial services, but other markets, I think those are some of the initiatives that we need to look at. And I think it's our obligations as CIOs or CTOs to really be the drivers of that change. I've always said that the digital journey or
Yeah.
digital transformation, I think, is largely driven by the CIO, and that's certainly what I think I've done a good job of, and what I enjoy doing, and seeing the results of that.
That's a really interesting insight. Um, I've always said that too, but I don't think it's always there because I think a lot of CIOs are still stuck in the IT ops, tech ops kind of mentality, and the world has kind of shifted underneath them where you can just rent that. You take like what are the values that a corporation is creating for its consumers, for its customers. If you look on one of those enterprise architecture charts, right? It ain't tech ops.
Well, it's not, and to be honest, that's not my area of expertise.
No, I know. That's what I'm
I
saying.
hear I hired, I had responsibility for IT and IT security and infrastructure,
Uh,
but I hired great people that had the expertise in that area. You asked about lessons learned,
yes.
in my career, and I give an example of, because you talk about technology and IT security. So
Uh,
when I came to Waterstone, there's plenty of opportunities for going to the digital solutions and that digital journey. And certainly I embraced that and provided that leadership. But one of the things I found is, as CIO, maybe your strength isn't necessarily in the technology area, but you've got to have the basics in place before you gain the trust of the organization to move forward with some of the digital initiatives. So the example I would give is I worked we were owned by a federally chartered financial institution. Our oversight was from the FDIC. And while I was gung-ho on new technology and digital transformation, the foundation you have to build, and in my case, I had to make sure from an infrastructure standpoint, it was secure, it was reliable, and also that as we were audited and evaluated, both as a public company, as in a federally reviewed company, that we passed those audits. And when I would go to our board at the bank or the leadership at the bank, I would be promoting all these other great things we're doing, but ultimately got their trust by showing that we did have a solid infrastructure. We had the controls in place. We had layered our security to the point where we were getting, I'd say, good marks from our external auditors. So, I've always felt that you gain the trust of the organization with those foundational pieces. So there's got to be no question from a security standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, and from a, frankly, budget management or cost management, that you're doing those things and you're doing them well.
Yeah.
And once you've done those and you've done them well, you've earned the trust, then you can be out in front on some of these other leadership initiatives.
That's a great insight. So that's one of your big lessons learned is take care of the foundation first and gain the trust of the board, so you can then be out in front. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're, if you're saying, hey, I'm doing all these great things with new technology, but you're not minding the store, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's going to be, hey, we that's great to hear about that, but what about, what about these foundational pieces? So I think that's one of the lessons learned, and part of that is obviously hiring great people.
Well, let's go. Let's keep going with lessons learned. Is that number 2, hiring great people, or what would be number 2 for you?
Well, for sure. I mean, I think, and this kind of gets into even our mentoring and why I've enjoyed that. It is hiring great people and, bringing in resources that may not necessarily know the mortgage industry or financial services, especially in security or, tech ops and some of those areas. But, identifying great resources, bringing them up and mentoring them, getting to know the industry, getting them to know what drives the business, and making sure that what they're doing in technology is supporting those initiatives. So, and then I think establishing obviously goals and objectives and bringing them along. So, part of that is culture. And I've always thought, and goes back to some of the lessons learned, I still think of 3 things that are important, I think, in leadership and developing the right culture. And it's really kind of the 3 C's: communication, collaboration, and culture. And, if you're a contributor or a leader to those 3 things, and realize that both in terms of your personal responsibilities, but what you're trying to build in the organization and the vision that you're trying to create, I think it's building around those 3 platforms and making sure that that you're fulfilling that within the organization. So again, kind of communication, collaboration, and culture, I think, are more the call them softer skills, but they're, I think in a leadership role, it's that balance between IQ and EQ is making sure that you've delivered on those 3 areas. So I spent a lot of time on that. I think one of the things, and I'll just go back to the benefit, I think, of working in my time at Price Waterhouse is that you're out in front of the client, you're presenting, you're communicating, you're accountable, and so I think some of the skills that I certainly not some, but the skills that I developed there are you can always. I had one boss that told me, "Hey, you have too much consulting characteristics in you," and I took that as, frankly, I took that as a positive, and that is that, you know, I think you develop some of those communication skills and analytical skills. I certainly did in my career there, that I've been up, you know, I still think back at many of those experiences and apply them every day.
Yeah, another great insight. So I like your 3 C's: communication, collaborate, and culture. And I like the balance of IQ and EQ. I'm not sure I'm there yet.
Well, I don't. I think we're all on that journey. My wife may tell me I'm not there yet. I have lots to do to meet that bar, but you know, we'll get there. I had one last thing. You know,
let's hear it.
that maybe I'd share, and especially those of us at small to medium-sized businesses.
Yeah.
We don't have huge staffs. We don't have, you know, we're typically, you know, partnering with software companies and implementing that. Certainly, I look at my role at Waterstone. We had 2 or 3 major platforms, and I've always said part of the success that we were able to enjoy is we developed meaningful relationships with our vendor partners. And you know, I was on the advisory board for a couple of the companies that we had, CIO advisory board, executive advisory boards, and we invested in that. And we said, if we're going to have a relationship with a core loan origination solution or a core loan servicing platform, it wasn't good enough, and it wasn't effective enough just to say, you know, we had this product, we implemented the product. We wanted to influence the vendor. We wanted to make sure we were getting their best advice in terms of saying, hey, the way you've deployed that product is there may be opportunities. And so we would expect that with the relationship we had and with the communication we had to get that kind of a directive. So I would say this: forming great relationships with your vendor partners, and that's a two-way street. I mean, obviously the vendor partner has to contribute and be agreeable and play along with you. But I think that's certainly the other, I think, keys to success in a leadership role is having those kinds of meaningful relationships and getting the support that you need, because we can't do it all internally.
I'm telling you, man, I learned a lot listening to you just in a few minutes. Make sure that you're getting your core job done, but still lead. And you earn the trust of people by making sure you get the core job done. But then also, like you said, it's your role as a CIO to lead the company into the future with the technology, and don't just leverage humans, because we can't anymore. You're not going to get the return that you need to. Not just, but you still mention, you know, the importance of IQ and EQ and team, so hiring the right people and working with them and nurturing them and grooming them. So I hear that in you. And I also hear the 3 C's: communicate, collaborate, culture, and finally the vendor. So basically what I'm really hearing you say, it's a people job. And
it is a people job. And I think, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because that's what I'm hearing you say. So now let's move to the mentoring area. And even with your company, if it turns into something, you're really focused on the data. If somebody says, like, what are your 2 or 3 areas of mentoring that you feel like, oh, I could really help somebody with this, you know, what would be those 2 or 3 areas that you would think about?
I think one that, frankly, especially proud of, I think, in terms of and some of the things we did at Waterstone Mortgages.
Yeah.
I think in the 10+ years I was there, we went through 4 or 5 iterations of our business intelligence solution. And you know, then we got serious. You know, we got serious about it and said, you know, this can't be a part-time. Frankly, we were hiring, you know, college interns and you know, just kind of cobbling together our data analytics and whatnot. So we got serious about it. You know, we made a commitment. We moved to a cloud-based, you know, data lake with Snowflake and some additional data analytics tools on top of it. And the tools are great, and you have to have the tools. But we hired the right people and worked with our business units to, you know, it's easy to say that we're going to be a data-driven organization. It's harder to actually develop the platforms and the insights that are needed to actually be a data-driven organization and react to that data. So I think one of the things is helping organizations think through what they need from an infrastructure standpoint, but then also saying, here's how you can really move the needle in the organization by developing and adopting and managing, using data. And I will say this, you don't always just make decisions based on what the data is telling you. You need the data, you need to be data informed, but still you're making the management decisions, right? You're making the decisions on, here's what the data is telling me, here's some insights, here's some forecast, here's some areas where the data is telling us we need to make improvements, and getting the KPIs out of that. But it still comes down to the business unit leadership looking at that data, and based on being informed, then they're making the decision.
I like that a lot. I mean, I've heard it said another way. The history and the data is not going to show you necessarily what you're building or creating.
Yeah.
But if you because that's in your mind, and hopefully on blueprints, right, of some type.
I agree with you, Alex. I mean, that's you still. One of the things that I think I can provide is that, while we are all, involved with technology, it comes down to humans. It comes down to humans and the people that work for you, the people that you're supporting and responding to. And I think that's the other thing, just briefly, is, I think one of the challenges we all have in a leadership role is it's not just the people that work for us, but especially in our role, we're supporting every department, every function within the organization. And frankly, you're not going to get along with everybody. It's not, your personality doesn't necessarily align with everybody, but it's figuring that out. And that's part of change, is figuring out, how do I motivate, one of my internal clients to make a change that I think is important. And part of that is figuring out, how do I communicate with them? How do they make decisions? And being aligned. A lot of that is kind of like, well, if I'm a Myers-Briggs, this, and they're a Myers-Briggs that, how do we communicate? And it's tough. It can be very tough. But I think over time you realize that that's part of the success, is just figuring out not only your boss and who you're working for, but all those peers and the individuals you work for. So I think I know I think we all realize that, but I think that's the challenge of working in an organization.
Yeah. This is what I'm hearing: helping organizations really, if they have data, BI data, concerns, and they really want to get more advanced in using their data based upon real experience, that you can nurture people with that and help them with that. I'm hearing the human side that we just mentioned. I'm also hearing a little bit of change management in there, because you talk about change, and driving change is really about people. What is there a fourth area that you want to mention, or is that your big three? Did I hear anything else?
I think the other area, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, and not to go off on a tangent here, but it is, what are the digital solutions that are coming to the market, and how do you do that? Again, we've all been on a long-term digital transformation, which includes the cloud transformation, but how do you effectively use those tools and whatnot? I happen to believe that, and how can we get by with an interview and not talk about ChatGPT, right? But I honestly believe that conversational AI is a game changer, and it's transformational. And I don't use that word lightly, but it's certainly
disruptive, right?
Yeah, it's very disruptive. And I'm affiliated with an organization that provides conversational AI consulting, and I've learned a lot just in the last a couple months that I've been around that. But I think that's part of what I'd like to do. And it's not necessarily just conversational AI, but when you look at, we're all looking to apply digital to workflows and automation and efficiencies. I always say that when you find a solution that, at least in our industry, that does three things, you've kind of got the triple crown winner. and that is a technology that improves the customer experience. In our case, it's the borrower experience. It improves internal workflows, which are positive for your teams, and then it drives down cost. And oftentimes we chase technology and the shiny objects that don't do that. But if you can find those opportunities that meet those three objectives, which I think is what digital transformation should all be about, you want to kind of hit the mark on all three of those, then I think we're successful. So I think that's one of the things that I'd like to help organizations think through. If you've got technologies and solutions in place, make sure you've optimized them, you've adopted them, and don't go off chasing everything, because you can't possibly do that. But again, I think you find good advice, good strategy, good support, and then finding the right partners. I think you're going to be successful.
Yeah, that's good advice. I agree with you on conversational AI as being a disruptor. There's no doubt about that. And I think what I'm hearing, because of your experience where you've built all these systems, you can see how this newer tool can really, in a lot of the areas you worked in, can help, right? And that's what I'm hearing. And if you go back to your premise earlier, that you can't just throw more people at to get those efficiencies,
right,
and to get the effectiveness that we need, you have to really have your foundation ready, you have to have your data ready, but you really should be out there experimenting with these new technologies in your lab or whatever you call it. And you can help them with that, because you're doing it already with the groups that you're already involved with. So,
well, and I think we'll see that. And it's, I think with conversational AI, the things that we need to be concerned with is especially applying it in an enterprise. It's one thing to play around with ChatGPT and have your kids do their homework or write their papers using ChatGPT, which is a whole other set of issues.
It's only a dream for that. Yeah.
You kind of worry and make sure that, the disruption to society, or the disruption to politics, or disruption to how we share and get accurate information, the application in an enterprise is much, much different and has to meet a different standard. And so I think we're far from that right now, but that's evolving.
I think you've said a lot in that statement, and I'm not going to go down to T2 world with you on this interview. We can do that offline. But I think, like, real world example, let's say you're an insurance company, and you have that conversational AI helping you with your claim or whatever. It's a real world example of what that conversational AI helps you with. How it's going to make a difference to someone's life.
And it's a lot different, frankly, getting it to that step. I've certainly implemented chatbots. We're a ServiceNow client, and ServiceNow has chatbots in it that, can go out to our procedures or our standard operating procedures, whatnot, and or various data. And, you have a query about how do I do this, right? Yeah, we can serve that up. We can respond to that.
Yeah.
But it is different if you're an insurance company or if you're a financial services company.
Right. That's what,
and it's actually supporting a financial transaction or a financial decision you're going to make.
Yeah, like maybe a mortgage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that has to meet a whole different standard than the chatbots and the kinds of interaction we've had in the past.
It's a disruptional shift that's happening right now, and you can definitely help them with it. What I like about what I'm hearing in terms of you actually helping our viewers and listeners is you can help turn this disruptional tool into something that an enterprise, a small, medium, large company can actually use to create a high quality experience for their consumer. And that's where the value is.
It really is. And I think, I go back to picking good partners and working with those. I think, who are the partners or who are the organizations that can really help me think through this technology, how I can plan for it, and how I can apply it within my company, my industry.
Yeah, that's great. Well, listen, this was an awesome conversation. I didn't think we'd get into some of the stuff that we talked about. We're grateful to have you to be able to help our community, and just this interview alone, I think, will help people. And so I'm glad to have you involved and excited to see what we can all do together.
Well, thanks, Alex. I look forward to our journey together.
Likewise.